Welcome to Trans Heartbeat. I'm your host, Michelle Matlock, and I encourage the use of all pronouns. A year ago, Mya Byrne's Trans State of the Union shook us in the best way. Her call for truth, resistance, creativity, and joy remains the most viewed episode we've ever released. Mya is a trailblazing singer, songwriter, poet, and activist whose music blends Americana, folk, and rock with the heart of a storyteller and the soul of a fighter. Her voice, on stage and off, is both balm and battle cry for the trans community and beyond. Today, we welcome Mya back to reflect and to reconnect, because the world has changed. The threats have escalated, and yet trans brilliance, trans resilience, and trans artistry have never burned brighter. In this follow-up conversation, Mya shares where she's at, how the political climate is shaping her life and music, and why, now more than ever, gathering, creating, and standing in our truth matters. This is Trans Heartbeat. Welcome to Trans Heartbeat!
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
One thing that would be lovely is for you just to say your full name, pronouns, where you're at, what you do.
This is my transsexual Bob Dylan look. It's like if Bob Dylan were a dyke in the 80s, I think she would kind of look like this.
I love it.
Hello, my name is Mya Byrne, Mya with a Y, Byrne with a Y, and that's how you find me online. My pronouns are she, her, and they, but you can call me Mimi or Mimi Ray.
Nice. So I know we just talked about it a little bit off recorded, but like you're in New York City right now, or you're in
Yes.
Brooklyn. You're in Brooklyn?
Mhm. Yes, I'm in Brooklyn.
And I lived for like 15 years in Lower Manhattan, and I'm just so like I'm feeling jealous of what's happening right now, just with Mom Donnie being mayor-elect now, and New York really delivering and doing that. How's the vibe there? How is it feeling?
What's interesting to me, and I think a lot of our comrades here online will agree that this is a major deal for everyone
Yes.
across the country, across the globe. They're like, wow, somebody who is a self-professed democratic socialist who's outwardly supportive of trans rights, of immigrant rights, and supports the Palestinian cause got elected. And to the point where, all of the ops are just coming after him. And I think I've been chuckling at how much just average centrist libs and white Democrats are like clutching their pearls right now. I'm just like, yes.
Right.
They're like, what's going on? I'm like, what's going on is that somebody who has literally stood with the people had just got elected, and that shouldn't be an odd thing. But it has. But New York City, like many places, has been in the hands of the Democratic machine for decades, and of whatever we're calling the Democratic machine,
right?
But really, it's all been the same machine for many, many years, and
right.
It's been. I don't want to get too much into politics, even though this is a inherently political thing we're talking about.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's just. I know people who worked like on the John Lindsay campaign many, many decades ago, and or worked with Harvey Milk and other folks who were considered radicals and were outside the lines of the Republican and the Democratic parties, and who were social revolutionaries in whatever ways they were. I'm not saying that John V. Lindsay was a revolutionary, but he did a lot of great things. He wasn't perfect. I'm not saying that Harvey Milk wasn't a revolutionary and didn't have his failings. He certainly did, but he did amazing things. And there's a reason why these people didn't get buy-in and support.
after Tuesday, like you said, that hope piece,
Mhm,
and that things ebb and flow, right?
mhm,
That it's going to come around. Like it just gave me so much faith of like, okay, I understand. I always hear this. The pendulum swings back and forth. I
right.
get it. I get it now. This is proof of that. And I'm, like, we're not gonna just go out without a fight here. Like the country stepped up, and it's a response to like an extreme thing that's been happening.
So many people thought that, you know, voting for Trump was a flex,
Hmm.
and then they got owned, and
Right.
that's the thing. But the other part of it is that fear mongering and Islamophobia are alive and well.
That's
I
right.
I think the thing that's been really interesting to me is I've seen articles from folks who are my age. I'm 47, who are talking about like when you lived in New York back in the day, when I lived in New York back in the day, of course, when I started working with Traction, I was living full time in San Francisco. Um, New York was very different before the year 2000, and
Yep. Oh,
a lot,
definitely.
and the 20-year war we've been in, 25-year war, and
Yes.
and people forgetting that there are really important causes, and the fractioning of the left wing and all of these other things, and basically has turned New York into a giant shopping mall in certain places. But to see people knock on doors and go into the Rockaways and going into, people knocking on my door, and I live in like an outlying part of Brooklyn, or people just everywhere, people saying, people who may or may not have voted for Mom Donnie on TV saying, they came to my house, they
Right.
talked to me, they're human, or like, that's the whole point, is that when people get excited for a cause, that's great and we can rally. But I think a lot of folks who are just like, there's a reaction to MAGA, which has been sort of, a friend of mine who's also a trans woman described it as, um, it's sort of like, it's like, liberal make America great again. Like everybody's like, we
Right.
need to go back to where we were in this
No.
time and blah. And it's like,
Right.
no, things have
That's not
always
right.
been, things have always been messed up. We've been fighting for a very long time, and a lot of us are very, very weary. And it's wonderful to see somebody who grew up in that notion of like, the world is always at war. We always need to be fighting for rights and humanity, and we can have joy in life within all of that, which is what Traction is really about. And I think Zohran Mamdani really, with his background and his mom is an incredible filmmaker and all of this other stuff, he's at the intersection of humanity and artistry. And I'm not going to put
Right.
him on a pedestal, but
Right.
I love that he came out on stage with Eugene V. Debs and ended with a Cuomo quote. I mean, that's just
Right. Oh
great.
my
I'm
God.
like, I'm like,
Him and several of the other people that sort of crushed their opponents is a
mm,
blueprint of what we need to go get back to. And also, I'm really
absolutely.
happy about like this feeling of it, tearing it down a little bit. Like
Hmm.
let's tear it down, and but with the plan with a plan, not just
Hmm.
ideas, but we got a plan for rebuilding and how we want to go forward. So
Absolutely.
anyway, I love hearing your voice on this, and it I just to bring us around to a year ago, basically,
Hmm.
when we you did the trans state of the union, and we aired it. It was like our inaugural episode
Hmm.
of Trans Heartbeat. It is still to this day the most um viewed post that we have all across the
Means a lot.
board.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's super popular. Our social media person dropped that little info on me right before we were. She knew I was coming to
Mm.
talk with you today, so she was like, "Let her know."
Aw,
um,
you're happy.
so I want to know with like, how are you feeling now about it? Like on any level, like personally, politically, creatively, compared to a year ago, that address that you gave, how are you feeling about it?
I think that pretty much every word of it still stands. I
Yeah.
I think that I remember that I didn't pull it up or anything, but I know that I said something about visibility and how visibility is beautiful and also is the reason why people are attacking us still.
Right.
People know trans people. Um, I think the situation has shifted in the fact that people genuinely are leaving. Uh, my friends are going to. I just wrote a song called "The Revolution's Now," basically pointed at cis people and and liberals in suburbs, just being like, the revolution is right here.
Right.
It is here. The thing that you've idolized, it's here right now, and you need to get the hell out of your house and stop. Stop playing. You know, stop playing. PS4 or whatever. I mean,
Right.
you can play PS4 if you want to, like after you've gone and done some work for the people.
Right.
But the there's been such a complacency, and
Right.
I think the thing that's changed is I was not expecting the as a person who's actively been part of both street revolutionary action and has been a talking head or a pundit or rallying people up, or just taking care of people in my home. We have a spare bed here for folks. Um, it's really been interesting to see these No Kings protests, and a lot of
Yes.
far lefties have so-called far lefties have just been like, oh well, they're not important, we don't really know who's running them. I'm like, I don't really care. This is the first time I've seen mass action
That's right.
from general people.
That's right. I heard a statistic also. Then,
Hmm.
if we're to look to history about
Hmm.
what actually provokes change, it's when 3.5% of the population hits the streets. So the first one was 5 million. The second one, No King's March, was 7 million. We need to get to 12 million. Right? Like, I hear you. I hear people say that all the time. Oh, it doesn't matter. I think it does matter, and it does make a difference.
We're seeing something we haven't seen in a really long time,
Right.
which is a mass movement. And yes, it's reactionary. Part of it is Trump, but part of it is just, people people really love edgelord humor until it starts regulating them or stealing eggs, from their grocery stores.
Right.
Um, but I think it's a very good way to see the humility that I think people are when and I know this, it's like when we protest, when we show up, it feels so good. Like I've been looking forward all day to this conversation with you because I know I'm showing up for something, right?
Right.
And that's that's the thing that's most important to me is just is seeing this kind of showing up. I think
Yes.
it's it's like you really actually have to show up.
You really
It's
do.
so important.
And I
Yeah.
have been encouraged by seeing, well, mostly like cis white women.
Yeah. Right? So many people will withdraw themselves from uh revolutionary causes because they were taught that it wasn't their, they didn't want to take up space. And I say this over and over again. The reason that we made gains in the years 1968 through 1973 and a little bit further on into the 70s is because there was a great deal of unity between all of the revolutionary organizations, whether it's like the Gay Liberation Front and the Black Panthers, all of these wonderful organizations, the Young Lords and all. There's a wonderful picture that came out after Attica. It's a poster. It was on display at the Black Panther exhibit in Oakland and Brooklyn. But it's just a big poster that just says unity, and it's got a list
Mm,
of like 15 orgs that were all working together. And these are orgs that all fractioned off or were chopped up from
right.
within, whether from like external forces or just from cults of personality. And
Sure.
something that happened historically and is that all orgs have had this problem. ACT UP had this problem where there are jealousies, there are people who are doing whatever, and people just withdraw. They're like, it's not my problem. It's not, I shouldn't have a voice, because that's the lesson we learned from this when people are silenced within movements or are taught that they're, because of white guilt, that they shouldn't take action because that
Right.
it's not their place. They don't want to take up space. I said, please take up space.
Yeah.
Please show
Totally.
up and say the word trans. Please show
Yes.
up and put your body on the line in front of ICE. That's why they won in LA.
Right. No,
And that's
it's that part is so encouraging. I was just thinking about what you were saying about like that movement from like 68 to the early 70s or mid 70s, and just how we haven't seen this large of a movement really since then. I think. I mean, there's
yeah.
been movements, but and then I was just thinking about generationally. Like I think I'm 52, so we're kind of close there. And
Mhm.
our generation, Generation X, like reap the benefits of sort of our parents sit-ins and those marches and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And so then you got, all these other generations coming after us that are even more distanced from that experience. Like at least I heard firsthand from my parents who were activists, like what that was like and why I was reaping the benefits of my life. And so we've gotten farther and farther from that. So I think maybe that's why it's taken a little bit for us to like, or for people to stand up. It's just the distance from that.
Right. And I think there is absolutely what you're saying is that I think a lot of people, and I see this too, is that people are archiving the work that, folks like us did in like the late 2000, late aughts, early 2010s. And it's not like even nostalgia for the Obama era kind of thing, because I see
Mm.
that sometimes,
Hmm.
and I'm like, he still deported people, friends. It's okay.
Right,
We
right.
can love him, and also he's part
Yep.
of part of that system. But the thing that blows my mind is that exactly what you're saying. Like we grew up and we saw the causes that were happening, and then folks who are just a little bit younger than us who came of age like after 1996 and the HIV AIDS cocktail,
Right,
they didn't see people dying.
right.
They weren't, they it's not that the young ones have it so easy. They don't.
No,
Um,
not at all. I'm not saying that. No, no.
but there is something that I've been musing on the last few days, especially because I see a lot of ageism happening in younger communities, younger queer communities especially, is that like I was mothered by so many amazing dykes of the second wave feminist movement, and
Mm.
which some people might be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're citing second wave feminism and you're a trans woman. I'm like, yeah, well, they had some things wrong, but then there were some things that were absolutely right, like the devaluing of older women in society.
Right.
And that's something that we seem to have forgotten, is that our elders are alive and we are becoming elders every single day.
That's right.
I've been part of activist community my whole life because, it's like I grew up, my mother had like the handcuffs that she cuffed herself to the Soviet embassy in 1969,
Ugh.
like to protest the treatment of Soviet Jews. Like,
Oh my
on
goodness.
just, I'd be like, why do you have handcuffs? She's like, oh, those were, they had to cut them because we chained ourselves to the embassy. I'm like, okay, you know, she's
That's
like,
incredible.
I'm like, my mom in 1969 is like the coolest person. She's like standing up in the middle of like the Park Avenue synagogue in New York City and like talking about Vietnam
Amazing.
and like getting herself arrested and like that. And what I'm starting to see is people understanding too that like, you know, there's no such thing as nonviolent protesting. It's this
Right.
sort of it's this sort of like buzzword. People are like, oh well, we should be nonviolent. That's the thing that I've seen over the last year. People are like, oh well, we should be nonviolent. I'm like, yeah, it's totally fine to show up and like hold a sign and go do stuff. That's great. But don't forget that what we're actually talking about is nonviolent resistance. And there are some people who can do that and some people who can't. But
Right.
you know, that person who is putting her body in front of ICE is practicing nonviolent resistance. That is a tactic, and that is to be respected. It's not, when you put your body on the line, whether you're fat, black, brown, disabled, man, a woman, non-binary, whatever you are,
Right.
you are making a statement, and it's not just a statement like, oh, I'm so cool because I'm putting my body on the line. You're like, I'm putting myself in danger, and if danger comes to me, you will see what they're willing to do to us.
Mm,
And
mm.
that's the thing, and that's why it's so important for we often say middle America, whatever, like, people show up too. That's what's been happening. Everybody's showing up, and people, the powers that be. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a very, very, very famous activist whose name I will not utter here, but she said to me that when, you know, uh, she was working with, when she was on the other side of the line at one point, and she
Mm.
said the only time that the folks who were really in power would freak out wasn't when there was like some random like attack or like some little tiny protest, is when people were taking to the streets in
That's
droves, like
right.
during the Arab Spring and all of this stuff. And
Yes.
those are the things that get crushed very easily. And the thing is that no kings happening, so like, at what, twice now?
Yeah.
That's giant.
And
And
increasing each time. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's right. I think we
yeah,
see it, but somehow it's not like, well, I mean, maybe that realization is that light bulb is getting brighter and brighter each time, but I feel like somehow we miss that it's our, us showing up, also our economic power. I think people
yeah.
forget that we like the economic power that we have as a collective is extraordinary.
Oh my gosh, it's
The
so
bus
true.
boycotts, when they didn't ride the bus for a year, and it took a year, it worked. I mean, are we, I don't know if we're ready to sacrifice all of our things yet, but
But hey, you know what? Netflix's market share has gone down.
yeah, that's
A
right.
lot of people I know have left LinkedIn. It's just like,
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
it's Spotify is begging users to come back.
Right.
Market share is really important, and that's the thing, is like, late stage capitalism. This is what it looks like, and
Yeah. No, for
and
sure.
I got good friends everywhere, but the towns where I've been through seem to go like jasmine, trailing round a chain link fence. I always seem to wind up here. That's no coincidence.
As all of this is happening and intensifying, what are you doing? What's the work? What are you creating? How are you feeling like you're, showing up or being creative? What's going on over
for
there?
me, the thing that's been really important is stuff like what happened last night. Last night, I was with one of my partners in a house full of queer women, and then mostly queer women, and then some dubiously gendered other folks, and as I like to say, and they were hosting some folks who were playing for the Brooklyn Folk Festival, but they were I left my phone in my jacket, and I just was present in the moment, and my friend Kirsten Maxwell, who's one of my favorite artists, played a lovely set of music, and then that was followed by this trio of queer trans musicians from Minneapolis, who, like, Minneapolis, they're all badasses there, and they all know
Yeah.
the people I know, and we're just sitting around, and it's this thing called a a cranky. Like, basically, it's a device used, and it's been used for thousands of years. It's a scroll that goes
Mm,
around while somebody's singing a very long ballad so that you can keep track of what's going on, and it's very beautiful, and it was very, very moving because, it's like about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and then some older English folk ballads that were just, and I know that's really sounds niche, but it's kinda not, because part of what I do, my connection to community as a whole, is where can we gather? How can we tell our stories? What are
mm,
ways we can tell our stories and have them have impact, for everybody,
right.
on all levels? So for somebody who can't, you know, process language that well. Here's this little cranky device that's like showing you the scroll of what's actually happening. For someone who doesn't understand words, maybe they can sense the music,
Right.
or somebody who can't hear, or the music is there for somebody who can't see, and all of the above. There's something in that moment for everyone, and they're met where they're met. And I think that's, to me, what's been most important lately is to gather, to eat together, to realize that each of our actions matters. Every action we do, whether it's, to play PlayStation at the end of the day, you know, or to make a giant bowl of vegan soups that everybody coming to your house for this really weird art show can eat. You know, it's
Mm.
that, to me, is really the essence of activism, and about passing on the traditions of activism, and of knowledge, of passing knowledge around. And I think there's also a lot of disbelief going on right now. People like, I can't believe that. I'm reading a thing from last year, where I talk about, like, this is right before, literally days before the election, or maybe days after. I don't remember, but
Hmm.
on day 3, I actually was like having, like, having a gender affirming medical procedure when Trump signed the Biological People Act, and which is
Oh my God.
why. Yeah, that's my least favorite band from the 70s, Biological People. Uh, but for real, it's it's uh it's absurd, because
Totally absurd.
I just read Justice Jackson's complete dissent to the stay order that was issued yesterday on the trans passport ruling. You know, all hope is not lost for that. Obviously, I want to assure whoever's viewing this, and if this is edited into the final thing,
Nice.
that
Yes. Yes.
that I want to assure everybody that people are working really, really hard every single day to
Right.
protect our rights. And I see people running, and it's okay to run. It's okay to go somewhere safe that isn't here if you can. And I see people making those plans. But I think a lot of people they're not able to stay and fight, and that's okay. And
Right.
nobody should be shamed for that. And then I see, like, I don't know, I wrote this song. It was just like, you know, I don't have a visa. I don't have a plan. All I can do right now is take a fucking stand. Like, for real.
Right.
And like,
That's
and
real. That is very
yeah, it
real.
is real. And especially, like, just today, I'm helping people with doing name change stuff. My
Mm,
partner and I are checking our passports. We're like, well, we got about a year
mm,
before things get super duper weird. But the fact
right.
that I went from being like, okay, everybody, if you hear people using anti-trans dog whistles and whatever, to, being like, here's what you need to do, to, on the first 4 days of this administration, we knew it was going to happen, but just that being trans was made so illegal. Not even, as it was kind of illegal for a while, in the
Right.
70s, early 80s, but like, it's been pretty much quasi legal to be trans since 1992, and now it's just like, okay, now what?
Yeah, right. Now what? I mean, like, no, we're not
I'm
going
sorry, go ahead.
anywhere. Like, no,
Yeah,
I was just saying no, we're not going anywhere. Like
you're
that's,
not
I
going.
mean, I just want to touch upon
Yeah,
just
please.
um what you were saying about this
Hmm.
the importance of of coming together, of cultivating
Yeah.
community right now, just getting back in touch with that, because it just feels like in the world we live in, this capitalist world, they remove all of those things, natural things, from our access in a way that makes it seem foreign to come together, like for some folks, I think. And so that how important it is to gather with the people that you love, to meet new people, to accept invitations to new things, to gather around the fire, like you said, to have a meal, to break bread, to play music, to read poetry,
Hmm.
as you continue to work and voice and sing and play and reach trans youth and queer communities, our allies, whoever is listening. What's the one message that you're hoping that people will take away from your artistry, your music, your journey.
There's too much at stake for us to be fighting.
Mm.
We need to be creative. We have a great wellspring of abundance. Queer people do. And like, I wrote something in the Trans State of the Union last year, was that we're building, I can quote myself, that we are building community out of scrap wood and shared meals.
Mm.
That is what we
Oh my
have to
God.
do. You
That's
just
right.
said that. And like last night, that's what somebody built, this instrument, this musical instrument out of scrap wood, and we're all eating soup, right? And that's exactly what it should be. When we break bread together, it's so important when we find shared spaces. And I think the most important thing right now is to frankly is to not drown in hedonism. And I'm not trying to sound like a teetotaler or anything like that. Like, I'm just saying that we have a couple of choices here, and one is that we can party till we're dead, or we can, have a good time, where we can, and still just make sure that we are putting our arms around the people we care about and creating space for that.
Mm.
The work that I'm doing, it sometimes astounds me because I have no idea how I can write such hopeful songs in the midst of such heartbreak. How the hits just keep on coming. And I don't know. It seems like every couple of weeks or so, I'm writing songs to keep myself alive. I'm writing songs to give myself hope. I'm going to museums and walking around and looking at the leaves and talking to people and being offline, frankly, unless I
Mm.
need to like be in touch with people. Um, um, I'm not using I'm not using the commodity of social media capital to get my dopamine fix. And
Right.
I am very, very aware of that. I think the thing that I'm most interested in right now as an artist is making art. And I think that through the work of our hands and our mouths and our minds, whether it's making a really nice loaf of bread or building something that sounds cool, or even just taking finger paints, it's like, y'all, we got to touch some grass, because too
Oh,
many people are fighting, and we're fighting ourselves too. We have to be there for each other, because when the world is telling you that it's not okay for you to exist, the most meaningful thing is for people to show you that you do matter, you know?
yes.
And that
I
is
love
not a,
that.
that's not a message that can change. You do, all of us do. We matter, and the work that we're doing matters. And even if your voice isn't being heard because there's a lot of crappy voices drowning it out, or the algorithm is drowning it out. My God, I was scrolling through YouTube today, just like, looking at my usual cooking videos, chilling out after like kind of a weird afternoon. And, because it is okay to go online. It is okay to get your dopamine fix. But like, but all of a sudden I'm like, do, and Matt Walsh pops up. Like, how did this happen? And
Right.
my super well curated YouTube that's owned by Google, that is owned by all these other people that want to kill us.
Right. Right. Oh my God.
It's like there's no way to avoid these things, but we can stand for truth, and we can celebrate when good things happen. I think as Americans specifically, we are taught that when good things happen to us, we don't deserve them.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I want people to know, because I struggle with this a lot, is that when something brings you joy, try to hold on to that joy.
Mm.
There's something in Kierkegaard that I have to remember. I just love saying Kierkegaard, but that you Sondheim talks about this too, if we want to get super gay on it. We're just like, you know, in this world, like, we have these moments. We can hold on to these good things when things are really bad. And that's not to say to drown yourself in memory. That's to say that, like, when you are the most down, you have to find that light. You have to remember that something once showed you this light that you have inside yourself, you know. And I'm really interested right now for my own art is writing songs about that are really reaching inside myself, and really to put out messages of faith and hope, and and to, and I think the personal is the universal, and that I think that if there's one thing that I would want to, for people to take away from this interview, from Trans Heartbeat today, if there's one thing I would like trans youth and queer communities and our allies to take away from this, is that just being you is being enough. And that I hope that you can take from that you have done some things in your life that are absolutely beautiful. And when things are dark and rough and hard, there is always another point of view you can look at. And there's always something wonderful that you can remember. I hope that you have that life, that there's something in your life that you can remember is good when things are really, really bad. And
Amen. Amen. I could talk to you and listen to you forever, but I think that's such a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much for taking the time to
it's my pleasure.
to just follow up with us. We'll probably want to do it again and again.
My pleasure. I mean, I'm here for the cause.
Try and stay alive. Try and stay alive.
Thank you, Mya, for your honesty, your artistry, your activism, and for reminding us that visibility without voice is not enough. Mya's journey reminds us to lead with heart, create with purpose, and keep dreaming boldly even when the noise gets loud. Here at Trans Heartbeat, we believe that every voice matters, especially the voices that have too long been pushed to the margins. Our mission is to affirm trans existence, elevate trans stories, and build a future where joy, justice, and belonging are not optional, they're guaranteed. Until next time, stay strong, stay curious, stay radiant, and always remember that just being you is enough.